Well, I can't do a series all about pocket pistols without some discussion of Derringers. The Derringer I want to talk about today is this double barrel high standard made sometime in the 1970s or 80s. At first glance, it doesn't look like anything special, but it's actually a fairly unique design that represents an important step in the evolution of pocket pistols. The concept of the Derringer originated in the 1850s with the muzzle-loading single-shot Philadelphia Derringer. Today, we usually use the term to refer to any non-repeating pocket pistols. So with a Derringer, you only get as many shots as you have barrels before you need to reload. Most have one or two barrels, but some have three or even more. Various types of Derringers were popular for concealed carry through the early 1900s, especially the ubiquitous Remington Model 95, but they were gradually replaced with pocket semi-autos and snub-nose revolvers. These other pistols were not any smaller than the Derringers, but they did hold a lot more ammo. They also didn't necessarily require the user to thumb cock a hammer before firing. In a fight at contact distance, if you somehow manage to access the gun in your pocket, the absolute last thing you need is to have to then fumble with the hammer before you can shoot the guy who's right up in your business. So the single action Derringer was essentially obsolete by about the 1920s or 30s. In 1962, High Standard Firearms made an attempt to bring back the Derringer with a new innovation. The Model D100 was a hammerless double-action 22 caliber Derringer. This one is the slightly revised D101. It's marked 22 cal, which means it can fire 22 long rifle, 22 long, or 22 short. There was also a Model DM101 chambered for 22 Magnum. It fires one round at a time. There's a mechanism in here that alternates the firing pin between the top and the bottom barrels. The trigger pull on this thing is a real beast. It's got to be at least 20 pounds. But because of the way the grip is designed, I can get a lot of leverage because my trigger finger ends up meeting the trigger at almost the second joint, and that makes it a lot easier to pull. Since there's almost no room underneath this half trigger guard thing for your other fingers, some people will probably find it a lot easier to pull the trigger with their middle finger and just rest the index finger along the barrel like that. Because there's no slide or cylinder to interfere with, there really shouldn't be any problem with firing it that way as long as your finger is clear of the muzzle. To load one of these, you just lift up the stirrup, this little thing here, and the barrels will tip down. If you keep lifting it, the extractor will pop out, and then that'll let you remove the spent cases. Then you can put the ammo in the chambers like that, and then you just close it up like that. If you're using 22 short ammo, the manual recommends that you go ahead and push the extractor down like that so the rounds don't get stuck underneath it before you close it. The High Standard Derringer is substantially smaller than a snub-nose revolver, but not a whole lot lighter than an aluminum frame from that era like the Smith & Wesson Airweight or the Colt Cobra. It's 11.2 ounces loaded, which sounds light, but it's all steel and it's very dense. It feels like it would make a pretty good hammer in a pinch. It's roughly the same size and weight as a 25 auto from that time period, like this Beretta 950. It's actually a bit longer than the Beretta. With the grip panels, it's not really any slimmer, and you can actually remove the grip panels and carry it without them. They don't serve any functional purpose, but there still wouldn't be a whole lot of a size advantage over a pocket semi-auto. But it does have some other benefits. A lot of those old pocket pistols were not very reliable, and they actually weren't necessarily safe to carry with a round in the chamber or with the hammer cocked. The Derringer might only have 2 shots, but you can be pretty certain it's going to fire those 2 shots when you pull the trigger and not before, even if you drop it. The High Standard had a perceived ballistic advantage, especially the 22 Magnum version, but also with 22 long rifle. According to some of the prevailing wisdom from that period, 22 long rifle was considered to be a better self-defense cartridge than 25 ACP or 32 ACP. The High Standard Derringer was discontinued in 1984 when the company closed down. The rights to the Derringer were acquired by Belmore Johnson Tool, who started making a 38 Special version. That didn't last very long. Then the American Derringer Company picked up the design shortly after, and they made double-action Derringers in a few calibers, but none of them appear to be in current production. With the dozens of polymer pocket 380s we have on the market today, not many people are going to be interested in a two-shot 22 that's basically the same size. But when it was in production, the high standard Derringer was actually very well regarded as a backup gun by some who were considered the self-defense experts of that time. Our friend and firearms instructor Daryl Bulkey was recently telling me that when he was just getting started as a young police officer in the 80s, a lot of the older and more experienced guys that he looked up to were carrying high standard Derringers as a backup in a front pocket. He told me about one incident where an officer managed to survive a fight in an elevator thanks to a high standard 22 Magnum. Now that's about as close quarters as it gets, and I'm sure he was glad he didn't have to thumb cock that hammer first.